which I think it started now. Yeah, there you go. You're creepy.
Okay.
Although, welcome back to the Dr. Z show. So I found out last week that a beginning bit of our show got cut off. And really the only thing that was worth mentioning, that is still worth mentioning in that, is that for the next couple episodes,
Yep.
with probably like 1 or 2 breaks in between, we're going to talk about the shooter genre. And we broke it down into 4 categories: first person, third person, top down, and scrolling shooters. Today we're going to be talking about top down and scrolling. But before we get into that, we do want to mention that we're going to have some guests on the show probably next week. So stay tuned for that and the hilarity that will no doubt ensue. So do you actually, before we get into this, do you want to talk about your D&D problem? Just to mention that it's happening, because this has become a recurring theme, is that we talk about D&D in the beginning of the show.
Yeah. Also, just as a note, the shooter genre of games is also referred to as shoot 'em ups, because the term shooter is used for like actual like life events. So
when we are talking about the word or the term shooter on the show, we're talking about the game, the type of game, not
mostly because I think it would be weird to hear the term like a first-person shoot 'em up game or like a third-person shoot 'em up game. Like it sounds wrong.
Also, I think it's because shoot 'em up is more like arcade.
Yeah.
Arcade themed, and like you wouldn't go to like an arcade to play Call of Duty, like, for example. Like, just for example. Like,
that would be weird.
Well, it's like the type of people that go to arcades and they like play Guitar Hero. I'm like, you can get Guitar Hero and play it as much as you want. Like, I don't know, if you go to an arcade to play Guitar Hero, let me know, because I never see those machines being used, but they're everywhere, and every arcade I've ever been in has a Guitar Hero machine.
Yeah. It's Guitar Hero on the go.
But it's not. You're still standing in a room playing Guitar Hero, looking at a screen. Like, it's the same. It's the same as if you would do it at home. It's just louder.
But then you'd have to bring the TV with you.
Anyway, you were talking about D&D.
Yes. I was also just thinking how ridiculous it would be for someone to bring like a projector with them, to like just play Guitar Hero anywhere that they went.
There was a video that went viral of people with a projector, watching, what's that? It's called like Power or something. It's some I think it's like streaming show on the New York City Metro.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, so D&D. Our group we're trying to stop these cults from summoning their demon lords from the abyss, to wreak havoc upon the material plane. And I got in one of our sessions a pocket boulder, which is a thrown ammunition that you can speak a word giant. Yeah, it's just a.
Don't say thrown ammunition. You're not MacGyver. It's a rock.
That's what it's categorized as in all like the magic items and stuff in the handbook. So it's a pebble that you throw, and then you can speak a word in giant, and it turns into a large boulder. We started, and we also have a broom of flying, and one of the cults is all gathering in a fortress outside the city. So, and there's no height restriction on the broom of flying in like any rule set. So, messaged our DM this morning and asked if we could drop a boulder from orbit, and
orbit as in orbit the Earth.
Yeah, and kill all of them in one fell swoop. So, depending on, hopefully the meteor doesn't destroy the city as well. But anyways.
And now we've come full circle back to the Armageddon discussion we had in a previous.
Yeah. So
Bruce
so
Willis,
what we're
the
trying
monster equivalent of Bruce Willis will have to go up to the asteroid with the team of the monster equivalent of oil drillers and drill a hole into it and blow it up with a nuclear missile.
I had a terrible thought of like the goblin equivalent of Bruce Willis, or like a kobold, like kobold Bruce Willis. Like they like launch themselves in a trebuchet just so like to land on it.
I just imagine Bruce Willis's face with like giant goblin ears.
Yeah.
No other difference, just like huge goblin ears.
Oh gosh.
Okay. Anyway, so we're gonna talk about shooting games.
RootyTootyMcShooties.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment though. Like whoever decided to call them guns instead of RootyTootyMcShooties, like severely missed the bar. Sort of along the lines of why isn't the border of Finland called the finish line? And who decided to call it the euro or previously the mark instead of Germany?
That's pretty great. Germany. The other thing is the doctors who named like all of the valves around the heart and everything, like the aortic or like cardiac, whatever.
Okay.
They could have called them arteries, and it would have been perfect. They missed out.
I feel like that could have gotten confused at some point, like
because they're the cardiac arteries and the cardiac veins instead of just the arteries. Although you can't really do it with veins, so maybe it's better this way.
Anyway, moving forward.
Should I talk about the etymology of the word gun?
If you want to. I was prepared for it to be more exciting than it is. I don't think it's very exciting.
Basically, they were like old Scandinavian Norse words, kind of meaning war. There was a woman's name like Gunhildur, and it came to mean, and the word like gun in Old English basically used to mean kind of like weapons of war, like siege engines and stuff. And so that's how it came to, how the word gun came to just mean, like the weapons you hold in your hand. Because it used to mean like old timey cannons and stuff.
And knives already existed, so like they didn't call knives guns because they already had a word for knives.
Yep.
Swords and things.
But they didn't have
a mace. It used to be called a morning star.
Yes.
Although I think that's more specific. The morning star specifically is the stick with a chain that's connected to a spiky ball. A mace is just
different? I thought that was a flail.
A flail implies that it has multiple heads, I think. Is now what it's come to mean. So like now a mace is just like a stick with a pointy end.
Yeah.
A pointy ball on the end. A flail is like a stick with multiple chains or whatever that are connected to multiple pointy things. And then Morning Star is like just one of those. Just one chain with one spiky ball. The Morning Star is also bigger. Like the flail heads are smaller. The Morning Star head is like huge.
Yeah. When one of my sisters went to Russia for a study abroad, she brought me back a little wooden mace, and it was the perfect size for one of the like crazy Bionicle sets where you could combine 3 of the major villains. It was perfect to fit in his hand. So, fun facts.
I thought you were gonna say for a second, like when you brought that up, I thought you were gonna say that she brought you back a Morning Star. I was like, holy shit, how'd you get that through customs?
An actual Morning Star.
Get that through customs. What's this? It's for my brother. Okay.
Larkman got a whole lot more interesting.
Now just imagine some like Renaissance reenactor showing up to like a LARP event with like full up like armor and a horse. Like he rides in on a horse.
He like javelins through someone. He's like, everyone signed the waivers, right?
There's getting into it and there's getting way too into it. That's a little far.
The waivers for the LARP event. It just gives everyone a license to kill.
But only within the event.
You may murder them.
Just only within the main boundaries, though. If you're outside the boundaries, then you get in trouble.
Yeah, then it's illegal. I was just imagining someone like in all of their LARP stuff, like at like some big like Ren Fair event or whatever, like getting a corn dog, like putting some mustard on it, and then just like someone jousting them, like, just going by on a horse, just like yeah.
Well, you said it gives everyone a license to kill, and immediately I imagined all of the actors that have ever played James Bond dressed up in Renaissance gear fighting each other with swords.
That's also pretty great.
To be honest, Sean Connery would probably win. He has the most experience.
That's true.
Okay, let's focus. Let's get on
top. Talk about shooting games.
So today we're talking about top-down and scrolling.
GoldenEye. Abby said perfect segue. GoldenEye.
Yeah, but GoldenEye is a first-person shooter. We're not doing first-person shooters until later.
No, but even still, we were talking about Sean Connery and James Bond, so I did really love Nightfire though for the GameCube.
Nightfire was great. We'll talk about that later. So in terms of top-down and scrolling, we're going to talk about a game that encompasses both genres at first, and that would be Asteroids. So think like you're the little triangle. And we're talking about like original Asteroids. We know that it's been remade like several times for Game Boy and then for PC, and then like there's a bunch of different like versions of Asteroids. But Asteroids is just your little triangle. You shoot the little rocks in space, and they turn into smaller rocks, and then you blow up all the rocks, and you win.
Yep.
Or you go to a stage where the rocks are faster, and they crush you.
Yeah.
Beneath their might. That would have been a great segue. The rocks in orbit.
Oh, that's true. Actually, that would have been it. Would have been the perfect segue if we had not talked about a license to kill. So Asteroids, great game. I played a lot of it growing up, and I think one of the key features of Asteroids is that you drift, like you gain velocity, like as you move in a direction, and then you start like drifting, kind of across the screen.
Because there's no gravity because you're in space.
Yeah. And there's wraparound movement. So
yeah, so if you go off one edge of the screen, you like show up on the other edge of the screen. So if you go off one edge of the screen, and of course there's a boulder right on the other edge of the screen that you smash into and you die, and you're sad.
Yeah, it was ineffective, but one of my favorite things to do is just like gain like a moderate amount of velocity and then just spin around and press the shoot button. So I would just be like scrolling across diagonally the whole screen and rotating.
Although you could shoot off the side of the screen and it would show up on the other side. That was effective.
Yeah.
The asteroid broke into chunks and one of the chunks like hit you at a diagonal.
Yeah.
So anyway, so the reason it fits into both is because the asteroids themselves in the original like first Asteroids game, the asteroids themselves did not move. The screen moved them. So bless you. So the screen there's just a black screen with white blobs on it that were the asteroids. The screen oscillated, and you had freedom of movement within the screen. Within the screen. So that's why it fits into scrolling. It's top down, obviously, because you're looking, down at the screen, and you are the little triangle, and like the camera is looking down. Or although space is like a 3D plane, you could argue that it's side scrolling, but for the purposes of our discussion today, asteroids is top down.
Yeah.
And so top down, that was like kind of the original top down shooter. There were like very rudimentary things that came before it. But asteroids paved the way for things like Galaxian, I guess, was first, right?
Yeah, and like Space Invaders.
So Space Invaders is side-scrolling, and we'll talk about that.
Side-scrolling?
Well, I would say it's side-scrolling, because you have they come down, and you move back and forth.
Yeah, but the screen doesn't scroll ever. Like it's like a fixed view. So I guess it's from the side. I guess it's from the side of the characters. So I guess that would.
I would say it's from the side of the characters because it's the side of the aliens and the side of your ship that you're moving back and forth.
Yeah, our primary distinctions between all of these genres is, a little bit gameplay, but it's mostly about the perspective. Like side-scrolling games, for the most part, your character can only face left or right. Like, sometimes you can look up and down too, but for the most part, you're only facing left or right. And then for like top-down games, you can face, for the most part, any direction, but you're usually only looking at the character from one perspective, more or less. And then first-person shooters, obviously, first-person perspective, third-person, similar to first-persons in terms of like gameplay and the freedom of movement in the 3D environment, but
mostly over the shoulder.
Yeah,
or further back. Some of them allow you to go further back. I would also say I'd want to bring this up for the purposes of our discussion. Just about shooters in general, isometric shooters, where it's kind of like the camera like looks diagonally like into a room, is going to be considered top down. So don't rage in the comments when we talk about the original Resident Evil and talk about it as a top down shooter. Just to avoid breaking this into a million episodes.
Yeah, because isometric games are functionally the same, even though the camera is different, but they're functionally the same as top-down shooters.
And what was the distinction you made about moving, being able to move diagonal, like in Enter the Gungeon?
Even though you can, it's a top-down because even though it's kind of an isometric view, like
you can move in 8 different directions.
Yeah, you can move in any direction is the main, because even though in side scrollers you can move diagonally like up when you jump and stuff, in side scrollers there's usually gravity as well in terms of like you have a jump arc,
right,
when you move. Just as like a random side note, there's a game called Robonauts. That's like a fun arcade game, and I would consider it's a side-scrolling platformer, but you move because your character really only faces left or right, but you can jump between different planets, and so you move in a circle around the different planets, but you're for the most part like you're bound to the gravity of that planet, so. So just another example of the difference, I guess.
Okay, so we'll go with I guess scrolling shooters first because that list is much smaller. So you were going to talk about your favorite scrolling shooters.
Scrolling as in like side scrolling, or
yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
Mega Man.
Yeah, and a lot of side-scrolling shooters are they're platformers as well. There are games that are platformers that are not side-scrolling shooters, but almost I can't think of very many platforming games that aren't side-scrollers, other than like
Super Mario 64.
Like, Super Mario 64.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, like 3D platformers. Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, you could argue that it's an adventure game, but that's kind of like an irritating argument.
I was thinking of the jump, that app game where it's like the jumpy dude, Doodle Jump.
Cannonball?
No, Doodle Jump.
Oh, Doodle Jump.
Yeah, Doodle Jump.
That's a scroller.
Yeah, but it's a vertically scrolling platformer instead of a side-scrolling platformer.
Although he shoots, so you could argue it's a shooter because there are monsters and you shoot them. Although, again, for the purposes of our discussion and what we mentioned last week, talking about the future episodes of shooters, you do not have to shoot things to progress. So, for the purposes of this, it is not a shooter.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the main distinction in shooting games is shooting is the primary mechanic by which you progress in the game. As a side note, like the original Tomb Raiders, Anthony pointed out,
they have shooting, but shooting is not the primary element with which you progress in the game. Yeah. It's solving puzzles. Well, now the original Tomb Raiders is just about like murdering as many dudes as possible. But the original Tomb Raiders, up until like the main huge reboot with like Shadow of the Tomb Raider, or whatever it was called, the primary method with which you progress through the game is by solving puzzles.
Yeah.
And running in circles because the environments are ugly and you don't know where to go. Sorry, I'll stop.
So my favorite side-scrolling shooter is Mega Man X. It's a classic, super fun,
great,
a wonderful, wonderful game. Second for me would be any Metal Slug game because those are fun. Played them in arcades a lot. They're fun and silly. You fight Nazis.
I mean, yeah. As another side note, and we'll talk about this later when we talk about first-person shooters, but whoever came up with Nazi zombies, like, they worked so hard to find something that could offend no one. Like, just endless streams of killing Nazi zombies. It's okay, because they're zombies, but you get bonus points because they're also Nazis.
Yeah.
We're not getting political, just saying. Just saying.
Yeah.
What?
Abby chimed in that it shouldn't be a political statement to say that Nazis are bad.
No, it's not. That's okay. We'll go out on a limb and say something political. Nazis are bad. Only because we don't think that it should be a political statement. We fought a whole war about this, people. Let's get on the same page.
Yep. So, but yeah, side-scrolling shooters, they're fun. I don't know that I've played many of them that are poorly designed, I guess. Other than maybe Mega Man X6, but that's because you have to do like a really crazy sequence in order to finish the last level with one of the armors, and like you're locked in once you choose what you're going to use for the Wily levels to use it for every single Wily level. And there's like a leveling mechanic in that game, so if you've been using one set of armor or character the whole time,
you're talking about X6, right?
Yeah, X6.
Okay, because I only played X.
A lot of parts of X6 were really fun, but I never finished it because you unless you do just this really crazy thing, you can't beat it with one of the armors.
Is it like the arbitrary, like you have to pick the right armor, and you don't know until you reach the end of the game which armor that is? I hate that. System Shock does that shit, and it's so irritating.
Yeah.
System Shock, like you have the like stats you can upgrade, and then there's like, what does he call it in Zero Punctuation? the ending Tron 3000. You spin the wheel, and if you did not arbitrarily put enough points in flower arranging, you can never reach the end of the game.
Yeah. So there's a way to do it. I watched someone on YouTube like do it, but it's like a weird, you have to do like a really like niche like jump arc, and then you have to use one of the abilities that like freezes time, but that's not the point of the ability. It's like one of the super abilities that just happens to freeze you in place in air, and then it gives you just enough tiny bit of movement to get past this one gap.
Fun fact though, speaking of freezing time and Mega Man, so you know the yellow monster that moves back and forth across the screen?
Yeah.
And that's like a really hard boss fight?
Mm-hmm. Yellow
Devil. Yes, Yellow Devil. Which Mega Man has like the laser, like the lightning bolt looking gun? What armor is that?
It's one of the Elecmans.
It's one of like it's like a long beam though.
Oh wait. So not the one that fires the three, like the three electric beams. Like there's one in front.
Three electric beams. Anyway, point. So you have to shoot Yellow Devil in the eye, right? And like you shoot him a couple of times, and then he like moves back and forth across the screen and like does a million damage to you, and it's very hard.
Yeah.
So if you shoot him with that specific Elecman gun, it will only hit his eye one time, even though like the beam is really long, but the beam has damage throughout, like the whole beam does damage.
Okay.
But the way that the damage system works in Mega Man is like he will basically get iframes, which are called invincibility frames, where you can like shoot him and then you shoot him again and he doesn't take damage for a certain amount of frames in the game. So what you do is you shoot him with that beam, and as soon as the first part of the beam hits him, you pause and unpause the game really fast, and then every piece of the beam will hit him, and you can kill him at one shot, essentially.
Okay, that's pretty sweet.
I don't know if you ever knew about that, but that's...
Are you thinking... wait, is it the... I know Spark Mandrill had the one that was like the three electric things that would run along the ground.
It's... you have to jump up and shoot it in the air, because you have to hit him in the eye, again. And the eye is like in the center of his face.
Okay.
It's like Big Robot. I don't know. You can look up to see which Mega Man it is. I don't remember, but I looked at it yesterday. Your Mega Man cheat code for the day.
Yeah. So some silly things that speedrunners and other people do by pausing and unpausing games that has unintended effects.
Well, I think beating the boss as fast as possible with as little damage as possible would be an intended effect.
But I don't think that the designers of the game were like, haha, like, guess what?
Oh, maybe not.
Pause and unpause it, like, it gets rid of the iframes. Whoa.
Probably not. Although that's probably exactly what they sounded like the entire time they were devising this game.
Yeah, every single one of them.
Moving on. We're moving on. So you talked about Metal Slug. I really like Metal Slug 2. I think 2 as in addition to you liking Metal Slug. I think that Metal Slug is very hard, but it's very hard in order to wring the youth out of their quarters as much as possible, which is why I really liked the one that was for the Nintendo DS, because you had health. Granted, it was like very limited health, but you had health, and like it didn't just murder you the second you took one hit from anything.
Yeah.
But speaking of bullet hell shooting, and bullet hell shooters are, again, for discrepancies, bleh, to cover discrepancies in what we were talking about here. A bullet hell shooter is anytime you get hit by something, ideally shooting. So if like a single thing hits you, you die. You lose the life.
Yeah. And the
lose the game.
Is to, like,
very extreme
in and out.
Yeah, so the point is like based a lot on your movement. So games like Galaga, Galaxian, Asteroids, Battle Stations Midway with the plane,
Yes.
Those are all bullet hell shooters, because if you get hit one time by one thing, whether it be an enemy or an enemy bullet, you die. Granted, you have lives, but you know, you die in one hit.
Yeah. And asteroids are kind of interesting because even though the asteroids aren't like they're not like firing weapons at you, but there are lots of objects on the screen that you have to avoid.
And there were the aliens. In later levels, because the aliens were the bonus points that would like sometimes scroll across the level, but in later levels the aliens would scroll across the level and they would shoot things at you.
Yeah, and I think the final level of asteroids, like you're on Earth, like level 5 or whatever, you're on Earth and you're trying to stop the alien invasion. It plays a little bit like it plays a little bit like
the Game Boy version of asteroids, right?
Yeah, the Game Boy version.
Okay,
because I looked up one of the codes on GameFAQs to just skip to the final level when I was a wee lad.
When you had to look things up on GameFAQs or read it in like a game like cheat code book.
Yeah, those are fun. So
anyway,
yeah.
One more thing in the scrolling before we get into the top down. Contra is great, and one of the first instances of the Konami code: up, down, left, right, start, select, to get 99 lives. But it is so goddamn hard. It's so hard.
I've never played a Contra game.
I've never beaten it without the Konami code. You didn't play Contra 4? I thought I lent you Contra 4 for the DS.
No.
Contra 4 was especially mean because it had 3 difficulties, easy, normal, and hard. But after the 5th stage, if you were on easy or normal difficulty, the game would end. And you would get like the bad ending. To progress to stages 6 and the final stage 7, you had to be playing on hard.
That's very mean. Wow.
It's mean. So people today are like, oh, Dark Souls is hard, so you can't experience the full game. No. Contra 4 for the DS.
Man.
And those games are like imaginary hard. Like they're not actual like hard because you're impatient and you can't fight an enemy in Dark Souls without stuffing candy in your mouth while playing. Like Contra games, especially Contra 4, is imaginary hard because there's just like a million things shooting at you at all times, and enemies like jump up from behind buildings and fire rockets at you. It's hard, frustrating, put you in a shitty mood.
I thought imaginary hard was like when games increased like enemy damage or something like that.
Well,
it wasn't like
in the sense that like there's nothing that tells you, like all the scenery is like destroy buildings and stuff, and there's nothing that tells you unless you've played through the level and you remember exactly where it's happening. There's nothing that tells you like, oh, an enemy is going to jump out from behind this building and fire a rocket at you that's going to take up half the screen. Like there's nothing that tells you that.
Okay.
So you're just like running along, like shooting your enemies, and then like suddenly this guy shows up and like fires a gun at you, and like you happen to be in like the pixel that's your elbow is like in the same radius as where the damage happens, and you just die. And you're like, what?
I also just had a spark of a memory that I'm not sure what genre exactly would fit into. The Terminator 2 game for the Sega Game Gear.
Sega Game Gear. We're taking it back.
It was a handheld Sega system, and it was amazing. It was so dope. But it was such a good game. It was such a good
garbage. The system was garbage. It was so weird. Like it was like a 2DS that mutated. It was very large and like weird.
It was very just the size of a Switch, and had one of the best Power Rangers games ever made. There was like a Power Rangers game that was like it was like Street Fighter, and it was awesome. It was so good. It was such a good game.
I vaguely remember that game. Anyway, yeah, okay. The Sega Game Gear.
The Terminator 2 though was really insanely hard, but it was basically almost like a rail shooter, but they had because it had the like scrolling feature, so rail it was like first person scrolling.
Rail shooters being where you're locked into a path, so like Time Crisis, Ghost, no, not Ghost Recon. What's it called? It's like Ghost Squad or something.
Yeah.
It's called Ghost Squad.
Or something like that.
Yeah, typically games you would play in arcades.
Yeah.
Time Crisis being the best.
House of the Dead.
Yeah, House of the Dead. Duh. I forgot.
But the weird thing was that it was like a console game, like and so typically rail shooters you have like a physical gun that like shoots like a infrared laser that registers on the screen like where the hits are, but it was
why is the gun smoking?
But it was like it was for like a handheld console, and so I don't know if that like made it extra difficult, but every Terminator game I've ever played has just always been insanely hard.
Have you seen any of the Terminator movies?
No, actually.
That's why.
Oh wait, no, I have the. Sorry, I saw the one where like they find that robot dude who's like supposed to be the one with the one with Christian Bale.
That's Terminator Salvation. I like Terminator Salvation. Terminator 2 is considered to be the best of the original trilogy, and I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
But Terminator Salvation, I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I've seen parts of 2.
Christian Bale's awesome in that. And Nick Stahl plays John Connor in Terminator 3, and he's terrible. He's like a whiny child for most of the game. I mean, granted, like a whiny child plays John Connor in Terminator 2, but it works with like the setting.
Yeah.
In Terminator 3, he's just a baby. Not saying I wouldn't be in that situation, but point.
Man, maybe.
So top-down shooters, your favorite. We will lead off with. Except now you have to choose between the one you originally said is your favorite, and since we're including isosymmetric shooters, you have to choose between that one and Enter the Gungeon.
Oof. Yeah, it's a hard choice between Enter the Gungeon and Alien Swarm. I am gonna. I don't know if this is a cop out, but I'm gonna say that Enter the Gungeon. Oh shoot! Nope, I can't. Oh no! Enter the Gungeon's in like a nebulous void now because I was gonna say it was my favorite roguelike, but Dead Cells is my favorite roguelike.
Yeah, no, Dead Cells is your favorite roguelike. If you're friends with Jacob on Nintendo Switch, become friends with Jacob on Nintendo Switch, then look at his game history. As of yesterday, 270 hours in Dead Cells. And remember, if you remember the secret backstory DLC of our life and the original couple episodes of the Dr. Z show, I was like, Jacob, you gotta get Dead Cells. And he's like, okay, like
Yeah, I only got it. This past summer.
Get Dead Cells, Jacob. Play Dead Cells. Yep. 270 hours later, he's still trash.
Yeah. Hey, I've beaten more games than you have.
Yeah, because you have less games than I do, and you have more patience than I do. I think. Although I'd like to see you play through Dark Souls.
I would love to play Dark Souls. I've never owned a Dark Souls game.
Oh man, you gotta get remastered for Switch. You can't take it with you because it's like a time sink, but.
Oh yeah.
It's out for Switch. You gotta get remastered.
Okay, wait. So,
point.
This is weird because like Enter the Gungeon is it's an amazing game, but I think I would still pick Alien Swarm as a better like top-down shooter for me.
Excuse me. Alien Swarm has more mechanics, and it is more based around the team gameplay.
Yes.
So,
and I really enjoyed that.
For a little bit of backstory, Alien Swarm is a game that was originally indie developed, and Valve, the creators of Half-Life, and they own Steam, got wind of Alien Swarm, and they were like, "This game looks awesome." They hired all the developers, bought the rights to the game, and released it for free. And it's still available on Steam to play for free. Great game. Pretty short. There's like a level editor, but I remember you messing with the level editor and being like pretty complicated.
Yes, I'm not good at SDKs. I haven't sunk the time in to be good at them.
But now with the addition of the Steam Workshop, you can download like level packs or whatever. But the game is team-based. It's think like sort of Left 4 Dead, where there's 4 characters. But there's like a medic, an engineer, a commander.
Yeah, it was like.
And then like a sniper.
Yeah, it was like a leader, weapon specialist, a medic, and an engineer.
Oh right, the weapon specialist had like you could pick like a sniper or like a heavy, like a minigun kind of gun. And you like went to this base and there were like these aliens and you were fighting them and then you had to like hack consoles and so everybody had to defend them and on and on. It's very hard, but Jacob and I played it a lot when it first came out. And it's very good. So if you have time and friends.
Yeah, because I tried matchmaking on it a few years ago and
it's bad because there isn't a built-in voice chat. Also.
Oh yeah.
And if they patched, I think they did patch in a built-in voice chat, but it was like kind of garbage. We should play again since it's free.
It'd be fun.
Just download. Maybe we'll play it on an episode of the Dr. Z show.
I think you can do it with only. I think you can clear some of the levels with only 2 people. It's harder, like but it's possible because some of the levels require an engineer.
All of the levels require an engineer.
I think there's some that don't. Like the hospital level, it doesn't require an engineer because you just have to burn. It requires flames.
That requires a weapon specialist, I think.
Yeah, you have to burn down all of like the plant stuff that's grown. But yeah.
Anyway, if you'd like to watch Jacob and I yell at each other while we play Alien Swarm, let us know in the comments, or we might just do it anyway because the game's fun and I miss playing it.
And because yelling is fun.
You could win at yelling. Although yelling into microphones is obnoxious.
It's bad.
Okay, so I guess you could pick Alien Swarm and Enter the Gungeon. Because they have enough differences that they could both be your favorite.
Yeah.
Enter the Gungeon's also a bullet hell, though. Yeah. Not in that you have multiple lives, but you have multiple hearts. But any damage you take gets rid of one of your hearts.
Yeah.
So my favorite top-down shooter is Grand Theft Auto Chinatown Wars. Because that game was amazing. I got it for original DS, which was weird. Like, if you remember back in the day when it came out, they were like, Rockstar was like, hey, we're going to make a Grand Theft Auto game. And everybody was like, yeah, for the DS. And everybody was like, what? But it was great. And then it got re-released on iOS, where it's actually even, I would argue that it's even better. Because you can make a playlist and have that be a radio station. So you can have your own music. It gets rid of the irritation of needing to pull out your stylus to like do some of the touchscreen kind of gimmicky things, like making Molotovs or hot wiring cars, and because it's all on the touchscreen. And the processor on newer iPhones especially is better than the one on the DS. So it can render like more things happening without frame skips and weird like jumping around. It has a great story. The story of the game is amazing, and I never saw the twist ending coming. Not like in a million years. But it's great.
It was a dream. You wake up under the cupboard. You're not at Hogwarts. That's what everyone.
Also, it's the only Grand Theft Auto game to feature drugs, and was banned in Australia because of that. because you can buy and sell, not to feature drugs, but you can buy and sell drugs as like a sort of mini money making like mini game like side activity. So also we're gonna talk about so Galaxian and Galaga. I would say Galaga to me is like better, but it's also newer. Like Galaga, where you can like, get the different ship.
Geometry Wars. That's another.
Geometry Wars. Oh, I totally forgot about Geometry Wars. It's such a good game. Geometry Wars is fun. It's fun. Although, like, warning if you're photosensitive to light and like flashing, because Geometry Wars has a lot of that. It's very like frantic. If you can survive in a nightclub, you can survive looking at Geometry Wars. I think is my my distinction there.
If you can survive in Galaga, you can survive in Geometry Wars.
No, if you can survive in a nightclub, you can survive in Geometry Wars. Like looking at it, because the flashing and all kinds of things. Yeah, and so there's like the famous like Galaga.
Will be like
a nightclub survival.
If you had to write a survival guide for a nightclub,
maybe we'll talk about that next week. That could be our bit next week. I'm gonna write that down. But anyway, so there's the famous like, you let the Galaga monster like take your ship, and then it has your ship, and then you shoot it, and you get 2 ships, and on and on.
I've never played Galaga.
Galaga's fun. I like it better than Galaxian, also because you can move up and down in Galaxian, or in Galaga. In Galaxian, it's just side-scrolling back and forth.
Okay.
In Galaga, you can like move around stuff.
Okay.
Last but not least on our original list, we have Magica. Did you ever play Magica?
I never played it, but I'd heard of it, and I think you sent me. I think you might have like sent me an invite or something on Steam once or something. I just like I never bought it. But
I think there was like a free-to-play weekend. I played it with our friend Patrick a little bit, who was a friend of ours in high school. I'm trying to think of who else I played it with, because I know there were other people I played it with. I might have played it with Will.
It seems
that seems like something he would play. But
it looks really fun. I've just never played it.
So Magica and its sequel, Magica 2, they're not exactly RPGs. They're like adventure games where you're a team of wizards. There's always 4 of you.
And you can kill each other.
Yes, however, friendly fire is always on. And if you know anything about wizards, there's this thing called splash damage. So I won't try to describe the system for selecting spells because it's difficult to describe, but it's very simple at the same time. And then you can like mix spells together. So there's like a beam spell, and you can like mix it with fire to create like a beam of fire, or like a beam of ice, or like a beam of whatever. And you can always mix your spells together. And granted, you have a sword, but the primary objective is to kill monsters with your magic, which you shoot out from you. So I would say by that rights, it does fall into a top-down shooter. Also, for original Magica, they released Magica Vietnam to sort of, they sort of were like aping the popularity of Battlefield Bad Company Vietnam expansion. So they were like sort of ripping off the popularity of that. But then the Magica Vietnam like just added extra stuff in the game. So like you could pick up guns in like this fantasy world where you're fighting these monsters that have like swords and arrows, and you're just like mowing them down with guns.
Wasn't there a cheat in Age of Empires where you could get a car?
Which Age of Empires?
2?
The answer is yes, but 2. How do you turn this on? you get a Shelby GT Cobra that fires a machine gun.
Yep.
And in original Age of Empires, the cheat was Big Daddy, and it was a. It's difficult to say what the car was. It was a sports car, and it was a convertible, but he had a rocket launcher.
Oh.
Games has a lot of weird cheats, including a baby on a tricycle.
Use a lot of those. Oh yeah, the baby on the tricycle with a shotgun.
With a shotgun. Very weird. Anyway, shooting in other games. A car in a medieval fantasy, historical fiction medieval real-time strategy game. A car. Okay, so we're gonna have a little bit of a shorter episode today. Not as short as last week, but we're at 51 minutes already.
Short episode.
Short episode, 51 minutes. When our original first couple were like 30 minutes, and then it just got longer. We were like, whatever. Hey,
I have gotten comments. We were like, wow, what a long episode.
Well, yeah, but I have gotten comments from everyone that isn't my wife that gives me comments on the show saying that they do like the longer format episodes.
Okay.
And you can always listen to it in pieces. You might have to rewind a little bit to find out what the hell we're talking about, but you can always listen to the episodes. Anyway,
backwards and think we're talking to Satan. Everyone uses backward speech to be satanic. Oh. And media.
True. Sure.
It's the cheap way to invent a new language or whatever. When you need things to sound creepy.
If you need something to sound creepy or like Satan, just use Simlish. That's creepy and satanic. Simlish, the fake language that the Sims speak. Also, the fact that it still blows my mind. This is completely off topic, but it still blows my mind that they translated pop music into Simlish.
Yeah.
To play on the radio in The Sims.
What? I had no idea. That's
go on YouTube after we're done recording the show. Go on YouTube and listen to, just type in pop, Simlish pop music or whatever, and listen to the real version of the song and then the Simlish version of the song.
Oh my gosh,
that sounds scary.
I look forward to it.
Sorry for life.
Wow.
So anyway, next week we're gonna have some guests and we'll talk about something completely unrelated to shooters. But then we'll get back on topic and talk about first and third person shooters in a later episode. But if you have a top-down or side-scrolling shooter that we did not mention, that you feel like you hate us for not mentioning it, let us know in the comments and tell us why it's your favorite. But other than that, we'll what?
Okay, last
do
thing.
The outro, Jacob. Trying to do the outro.
Last thing. Okay, fun fact. The Metroid games have been in all genres of shooter, except for maybe Down. Unless you count Other M with the kind of isometric view as being top down.
They didn't make a Metroid game called Other M. What are you talking about? There wasn't a Metroid game called Other M. What are you talking about?
Oh, I mean, yes, it is. It's not real. It's forbidden. It is just a nightmare that plagues those of us who love Samus Aran. But anyway,
the forbidden one.
Oh, except for maybe third person. Unless you count those sections of Other M are either third person or top down, depending on your
parts of Hunters. Some of the characters in Hunters could be played in third person.
Okay. Well then, there it is. We've hit all of
the genres. Anyway, can I do the outro now, Jacob?
Yes.
If we didn't mention a game that you want us to talk about, or if you have a first person or third person shooter you feel like we definitely need to talk about later on, Let us know in the comments. Other than that, you can catch us on YouTube or Facebook, and we'll see you guys next time on the Dr. Z Show.
Adios.